Robert, let's be honest, and it's even unfair that you're saying that.
We're talking about Kampala.
Is there a school that pays 200,000 shillings, even for baby class in Uganda?
But you guys, let me give my take on this. And I think it also gets from a point where you're now comparing figures. Government could get there, but we also have to look at what makes, government schools or private schools perform better. The performance is actually all about the teachers in those schools. So you have teachers that would now prefer to go to a private school because it pays well than the government school. Now that is where the performance differs. The good teachers are in private schools, and that's where we also want to take our kids, because that's where the good teachers are. But imagine a scenario if government was actually respecting these teachers and giving them the money, they would also be in these very schools. But even when government workers have security of, yes, I'll get money at the end of the month, how much is it? It's just of recent that they're trying to, bring up the new system of getting science teachers to be bigger salaries, or even arts teachers, and maybe then we can hope for a better performance. But as long as these guys still get, the 400, 500 on the bank account, they are going to sit at home and not teach, because you cannot be the same performance with a private teacher who is getting 2 million in a private school, and for you, you're just getting, 700 in a government school, and you're going to wake up and be in class and do your research and teach, children very well. So I think that is where the difference is. But as long as government does not increase the pay of these teachers or give them to that level, they will not have any incentive to want to work and get better performance. So I think it's all about the performance.
I actually don't believe that the best teachers are in primary school, in private schools.
In private school, yes.
Then how do you explain? How do you explain
Simply
the
about
performance?
motivation.
It's about motivation.
No.
Do you know
How
what
do you
a
explain the performance?
Yes.
Because let's face it.
Because recently there was a list of best performing teachers in Uganda.
Okay.
Remember that list that was in the papers?
Yes.
And these were being awarded, and majority of them were in government schools.
Actually, what private schools do,
you guys.
and we have all been to these schools, both private and government.
And public.
What happens is that at time of exams, they have to go and get those guys to come and prepare. You get it?
We've had instances where they say
saying?
that sometimes in private schools, yes, the teachers will give the children time, but then we've also heard of instances of pumping the children. And I think
In
at the
private
end,
schools.
in private schools.
And also there are instances of falsifying
what
marks.
is-
We've also had those
Guys,
instances.
So why is it that at the end of the year, when the performance list is out, it is the private schools that are performing
Because
better?
of lack of monitoring and supervision.
No,
where
I
a
don't
teacher in a
think-
public
No,
school
hold on,
will report
hold on.
and go teach in a private
Hold
school.
on,
bullets.
this is my point. This
Yes.
is my point. You cannot say we have best teachers in government schools, yet their schools are performing poorly. Performance speaks for everything. You have a list of over the top 20 schools in
And
the
there's no
country
government
being,
school.
yeah, there's no government schools, and then you're here
Which
telling
dissolves
us,
that.
look, I'm just giving, I'm just.
No.
Well,
But
this,
I will tell
It's
you
just
that's
monitoring and
what we
supervision.
have.
That a teacher comes in a government school, reports at 8, then rotates around, moves, goes, does other things, or teaches in a private school, then evening comes back. You get it? Because there's lack of monitoring and supervision. Whereas in a private school, even they will hire those teachers to come and teach specific lessons.
but anyway, at the end of the day, I know that most Ugandans will opt for private schools, whether we like it or not. So
the performance is better
it's a
there.
bit, saddening, but yes, that is the reality on ground. Well, we go through some of our stories, local stories and international stories. Robert, what do you have for us this morning?
Well, I'll begin with elder persons in this country, where government has yet again found a way for them to have a better economic livelihood, where government has introduced, that is the special enterprise grant for older persons, and these consist for those between the age of 60 and 79 years. The Minister for State for Elder Affairs, Dominic Mafabi, affirmed that 5 billion grant will be distributed nationally, where each group will receive 5 million. The grant is to be launched during this year's International Day for Older Persons that will be celebrated on the 1st of October.
Now in other news, lack of privacy, confidentiality and low motivation of public health workers have been identified as some of the key challenges which prevent pregnant mothers from seeking maternal health care services from public health facilities. Some of whom end seeking alternative care from traditional birth attendants, and findings are part of the study carried out by the White Robin Alliance for respectable maternity health care in partnership with USAID, now conducted in selected sample projects districts of Uganda.
And we now move to court, where the International War Crimes Division of Court has dismissed an application for consolidation of files from Masaka and Rengo cases, where murder cases which was filed by legislator Muhammad Segirinya and Alan Sewanyana. Justice Alice Chomuhanji, in dismissing the application, cited that the court has no jurisdiction to consolidate the files since the cases are distinguishable with different facts and offenses.
Now in wildlife, Uganda Wildlife Conservation Education Center, former Entebbe Zoo, has announced that it is in the process of building a biobank with DNA forensic laboratories in order to support wildlife crime mitigation through capturing wildlife traffickers. Now this was revealed by the executive director of this particular UWEC, James Musinguzi, at the launch of the kick-off celebrations for the 70 years of UWEC existence.
Well, and elsewhere, starting off with the U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris arrived in South Korea a day after the North fired 2 ballistic missiles off its east coast. The launch 2 days after South Korean and U.S. troops held joint drills was a clear act of intimidation that underscored regional tensions. Both South Korean and Japan officials reported the tests on Wednesday night, condemning the provocations. The U.S. bans North Korea from conducting ballistic and nuclear weapon tests, but the closed-off communist state has consistently defied this ban in recent years. This year in particular, it has tested missiles at an unprecedented pace. Pyongyang's missiles on Wednesday followed another it had fired into the sea between Japan and South Korea on Sunday ahead of the military drills. Now, South Korean authorities said Wednesday's missiles were launched between 1810 and 1820 local time and flew about 360 kilometers, equating to 225 miles, reaching an altitude of 30 kilometers. Japan's Coast Guard also picked up the launch. North Korea's provocations will further strengthen the South Korean-U.S. deterrence and response capability and only deepen North Korea's isolation from the international community, the South Korean Joint Chiefs said in a statement. The recent flurry of tests, 3 missiles in 4 days, are the first to take place since June, according to South Korean officials. Ms. Harris will visit Seoul before traveling to the border and the heavily fortified demilitarized zone which separates the north and south. And moving on to Facebook, a prominent human rights group says Facebook's owner Meta owes the Rohingya reparations for the platform's role in fueling violence against the mostly Muslim minority in Myanmar. Amnesty International issued the call for compensation on Thursday after accusing Meta of failing to act despite activists repeatedly warning the company about the implications of anti-Rohingya hate speech on its Facebook platform. The group said Myanmar activists had raised concerns about the issue with Meta as early as 2012, some 5 years before the country's military launched a campaign of mass killings and rape that forced more than 700,000 Rohingya to seek refuge in neighboring Bangladesh. The brutal crackdown is now the subject of a genocide investigation at the International Court of Justice, while in March this year, the United States officially declared the military's actions a genocide. In the months and years leading up to the atrocities, Facebook's algorithms were intensifying a storm of hatred against the Rohingya, which contributed to real-world violence, said Agnes Callamard, Amnesty International's Secretary General. While the Myanmar military was committing crimes against humanity against the Rohingya, Meta was profiting from the echo chamber of hatred created by its hate spiraling algorithms, she said in a statement.
Away from that, Guinea's ex-military ruler is on trial over stadium massacre. Now, Guinea's former military ruler, Moussa Dedis Camara, is going on trial over one of the country's worst massacres. Captain Camara returned from 12 years in exile to clear his name, which had been dragged through the mud, he told his lawyer told BBC. Now, more than 150 people were killed and women and girls were raped at a 2009 protest against military rule. I was raped, assaulted, floored by a soldier who asked me if he could cut off my arms, one woman said. I can no longer lift my arm, 63-year-old Anissa, not her real name, told the BBC. She is a former member of an opposition party. I had the shoulder blade broken, the foot splits, and they had to sew that up. My hips were split, said some of the statements. Now, 10 other officials are also on trial alongside Captain Camara, who is charged with having command responsibilities over the soldiers who carried out the alleged crimes. The International Criminal Court Chief Prosecutor Karim Khan welcomed the start of the trial, and on this important day, I applaud the people of Guinea, the survivors, and those who lost loved ones. The start of the trial is only the beginning. My office will be watching very closely. The presumption of innocence is critical, Mr. Khan said. It has also been welcomed by the UN's Acting High Commissioner for Human Rights, Nada al-Nashif. Victims and relatives have been waiting for 13 years for truth, justice, and reparations. In the climate news, flooding, power cuts as Hurricane Ian crashes ashore in Florida. Now, Hurricane Ian, one of the most powerful storms ever recorded in the United States, has swept into southwest Florida, flooding streets and buildings, knocking out power to more than 1 million people and threatening catastrophic damage further in the island. The extremely dangerous Category 4 storm made landfall shortly after 3 p.m. local time on Wednesday near Cayo Costa, the U.S. National Hurricane Center said, bringing sustained winds of about 240 kilometers per hour. The storm's wind speed put it just shy of a Category 5 designation on the Saffir-Simpson scale, the most severe classification for storms. Now, although the National Hurricane Center said Ian was expected to weaken slightly after coming ashore, Cayo Costa is a protected barrier island just west of Fort Myers, and officials warned of the dangers to the heavily populated Gulf Coast, with neighbors to Sarasota region at the highest risk of devastating storm surge from strong winds and torrential rains. Mark Brinkett stepped outside of his home in Venice at about the time the hurricane came ashore from the Gulf of Mexico, about 56 kilometers to the south. He called it terrifying. I literally couldn't stand against the wind, Brinkett wrote in a text message to the Associated Press news agency.
Well, Hurricane Ian clearly is still making more news, but of course you'll be getting more of those updates much later on in the weather updates that will be following through right after the traffic updates. But for now, we'll be going in for a break. When we get back, we'll be talking more about these Ebola elections. What's going to happen? What should we be expecting? What's the relevance of having representatives when it comes to the East African Legislative Assembly? Well, that and much, much more right after the break. Good morning, Uganda.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda.
Poorly. Performance speaks for everything. You have a list of over the top 20 schools in the country.
There's no government school.
Yeah, there's no government schools. And then you're here telling us, look, I'm just giving I'm just
No.
Well,
but I will tell you
that's monitoring
that's
and
what we
supervision.
have.
That a teacher comes in a government school, reports at 8, then rotates around, moves, goes, does other things, or teaches in a private school, then evening comes back. You get it, because there's lack of monitoring and supervision. Whereas in a private school, even they will hire those teachers to come and teach specific lessons.
But anyway, at the end of the day, I know that most Ugandans will opt for private schools, whether we like it or not. So it's a bit, I mean, saddening, but yes, that is the reality on ground. Well, we go through some of our stories, local stories and international stories. Robert, what do you have for us this morning?
Well, I'll begin with elder persons in this country where government has yet again found a way for them to have a better economic livelihood, where government has introduced, that is the special enterprise grant for older persons, and these consist for those between the age of 60 and 79 years. The Minister for State for Elder Affairs, Dominic Mafabi, affirmed that 5 billion grant will be distributed nationally, where each group will receive 5 million. The grant is to be launched during this year's International Day for Older Persons that will be celebrated on the 1st of October.
Now in other news, lack of privacy, confidentiality and low motivation of public health workers have been identified as some of the key challenges which prevent pregnant mothers from seeking maternal health care services from public health facilities, some of whom end seeking alternative care from traditional birth attendants, and findings are part of the study carried out by the White Robin Alliance for Respectable Maternity Health Care in partnership with USAID, now conducted in selected sample projects districts of Uganda.
And we now move to court, where the International War Crimes Division of Court has dismissed an application for consolidation of files from Masaka and Rengo cases, where murder cases which was filed by legislator Muhammad Segirinya and Alan Sewanyana. Justice Alice Chomuhanji, in dismissing the application, cited that the court has no jurisdiction to consolidate the files since the cases are distinguishable with different facts and offenses.
Now in wildlife, Uganda Wildlife Conservation Education Center, former Entebbe Zoo, has announced that it is in the process of building a biobank with DNA forensic laboratories in order to support wildlife crime mitigation through capturing wildlife traffickers. Now this was revealed by the executive director of this particular UWEC, James Musinguzi, at the launch of the kick-off celebrations for the 70 years of UWEC existence.
Well, and elsewhere, starting off with the U.S. Vice President, Kamala Harris arrived in South Korea a day after the North fired 2 ballistic missiles off its east coast. The launch, 2 days after South Korean and U.S. troops held joint drills, was a clear act of intimidation that underscored regional tensions. Both South Korean and Japan officials reported the tests on Wednesday night, condemning the provocations. The U.S. bans North Korea from conducting ballistic and nuclear weapon tests, but the closed-off communist state has consistently defied this ban in recent years. This year in particular, it has tested missiles at an unprecedented pace. Pyongyang's missiles on Wednesday followed another it had fired into the sea between Japan and South Korea on Sunday ahead of the military drills. Now, South Korean authorities said Wednesday's missiles were launched between 1810 and 1820 local time and flew about 360 kilometers, equating to 225 miles, reaching an altitude of 30 kilometers. Japan's Coast Guard also picked up the launch. North Korea's provocations will further strengthen the South Korean-U.S. deterrence and response capability and only deepen North Korea's isolation from the international community, the South Korean Joint Chiefs said in a statement. The recent flurry of tests, 3 missiles in 4 days, are the first to take place since June, according to South Korean officials. Ms. Harris will visit Seoul before traveling to the border and the heavily fortified demilitarized zone which separates the north and south. And moving on to Facebook, a prominent human rights group says Facebook's owner Meta owes the Rohingya reparations for the platform's role in fueling violence against the mostly Muslim minority in Myanmar. Amnesty International issued the call for compensation on Thursday after accusing Meta of failing to act despite activists repeatedly warning the company about the implications of anti-Rohingya hate speech on its Facebook platform. The group said Myanmar activists had raised concerns about the issue with Meta as early as 2012, some 5 years before the country's military launched a campaign of mass killings and rape that forced more than 700,000 Rohingya to seek refuge in neighboring Bangladesh. The brutal crackdown is now the subject of a genocide investigation at the International Court of Justice, while in March this year, the United States officially declared the military's actions a genocide. In the months and years leading up to the atrocities, Facebook's algorithms were intensifying a storm of hatred against the Rohingya, which contributed to real-world violence, said Agnes Callamard, Amnesty International's Secretary General. While the Myanmar military was committing crimes against humanity against the Rohingya, Meta was profiting from the echo chamber of hatred created by its hate spiraling algorithms, she said in a statement.
Away from that, Guinea's ex-military ruler is on trial over stadium massacre. Now, Guinea's former military ruler, Moussa Dedis Camara, is going on trial over one of the country's worst massacres. Captain Camara returned from 12 years in exile to clear his name, which had been dragged through the mud, he told his lawyer told BBC. Now, more than 150 people were killed and women and girls were raped at a 2009 protest against military.
Coming out of these elections because they believe it's just not for them, or they believe they're not fair. But right now, as we stand, we have about 28 contestants that are all willing to take up some of these 9 positions that are designated for Uganda as a country when it comes to all these, East African Legislative Assembly to represent the country over there. Now, the question is, who is going to be taking one of these seats home? We have 28 contenders, and we have only 9 positions. Now, of course, out of these 28 contenders, we do have representatives from, of course, NRM as a ruling party. We also do have members coming in from different opposition parties. We do have DP, we have the UPC, we have JEMA. We also have some people who are, some contenders who are standing independently for some of these positions. Now, we've had also several contenders come out to tell us their manifestos, what they're willing to do, or what they think should be the plan when they get there. And again, I know that the biggest number of Ugandans don't understand what IALA is exactly. What is the relevance of Uganda as an East African country having representatives over there? But maybe before we get into all that, I would just really love for Robert maybe to take us through the process. What is the process before the elections, and also the process during the elections? And I mean, again, what happens after the elections? If you can, maybe Robert, you should just take us through this procedure.
Well, first we must say that this time around we have a huge number of people who are contesting, because 28
yes.
for 9 positions, of which we know 6 are in face with the national,
with the NRM, yes,
with the NRM. And actually the voting is today. Nominations began on the 19th, that is of this month. And one thing that came out very clear is they set up a committee that was going to vet out of the 28. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on which side your opinions is, all the 28 that presented themselves had all the credentials and the qualifications,
yes,
so they couldn't remove any. Now we have 28, and today, Parliament, the 529 members of Parliament, are going to choose, and the top 9, in terms of who have amassed the biggest number of votes, will represent Uganda. Now, IALA consists of 62 members of Parliament. Each member, according to the 4th Assembly of the Legislative Assembly, each member, that is each country, has 9 slots.
Yes.
And it depends on the politics of then that country, how they determine, how they share these 9 votes. Now today we are going to see these members of parliament, I mean these candidates. Of course, a number of them are former members of parliament. after either working for some terms, and then the voters said, thank you so much, you've served us. Now they know there's another parliament.
Yes.
Actually, majority of the 28 were once in parliament. And they said, no, we have better experience in terms of debating. There's nothing we are going to learn because we've been in parliament. Let's go and push further for integration. Now, what is happening today is those political parties that fronted their candidates are going to come forward with their candidates and members of parliament, because it is members of parliament of that country that vote members of the East African Parliament.
Yes.
In Uganda, we have NRM is there with its 6, because NRM was clear. It said those that have been representing us as NRM, they represent Uganda. We choose, they go back for their final term, because it is 2 terms for the East African Legislative Assembly. And this current parliament, their term is ending on the 19th of December. So we must have had new members. So for NRM, those that have been coming from NRM are sure
that they still have those slots, yes.
Their slots. Now, what happens? We have those from FDC, I think that is Kaija. Then we have from DP, Slanda is there. So what happens, because NRM has the biggest number of MPs, this is what happens. You must ensure that either you're in good terms with NRM in one way or the other, because over a time NRM has proved that they have what they call caucusing and agreeing by consensus, that when they say these are the people coming as independents,
yes,
please, it is on record, there is no time that NRM has agreed and in the box all their voting changes. It is on record that for them, once it has been consensus, once the principal or once the top organs have agreed that, hey, when you go to cast your vote, please, we want this one and this one. My sister, it has proven they are loyal, they are obedient, and they work in unison. And those independents or those of a political party who have spoken well, whom NRM wants to see in Yala, will make it. Because look, FDC doesn't have even 20% of parliament.
Yes.
Nope, shunned, said, when we look at these things, first and foremost, the reasons for them they gave were very clear. They said NRM ring fencing 6 out of 8 is very unfair. And that is one. Then they gave another reason, that even NRM now is meddling, according to National Unity Platform, in a selection of candidates for Yala in other political parties. Not forgetting there's an agreement that was very clear that we are going to have a ministerial post and a member of Yala. You know that agreement?
Yeah.
Of a party that has the color you're putting on when they're making that agreement. It had, so how are you going to have that in an election? You have to decide if you don't have the power for that. So these elections, that is how they are conducted, and we hope by the end of the day we are going to have all the 9 well constituted to take on the main focus of representing us
now,
in the East African Legislative Assembly.
When it comes to these EALA elections, Felix, like I did say, we know that it's necessary for us to have representatives, and already as we have gone through the procedure, we have different representatives from different parties. But when it comes to the real positions, your party doesn't really count. What counts is why are you there? What are you fronting? What are your reasons for you representing Uganda? But I mean, what is the relevance of having, and not just only Uganda as a country, but all the East African countries that all that have the 9 slots to fill up? What is the relevance of a country being represented when it comes to EALA? What are the pros? I mean, are there benefits, and what are some of these benefits?
This EALA representation thing is is a joke for the side of the opposition. And for me, that's the basis of even us understanding the importance of that parliamentary forum. One, by setup of the East African community, we have the council, we have, I think that at the head of it, we have the summit where the president sits, we have the council where we see the ministers and all these people directly. But then later on you have the IALA where you have these direct members from member states. But the methodology of membership in that particular forum is a concrete sovereign understanding of each member state. I can tell you as a matter of fact that the IALA, to make sense out of IALA, the NRM in Uganda should just take all those posts. Because actually it has all the posts.
The fact that it has ring-fenced like 6 of the 9 slots.
Actually, no, the fact that the parliament is by far NRM.
Yes.
In fact, it is pejorative speculation for any politician who has what we call political sense to think that these, in fact, I was laughing at the people who went to, I don't know why you waste time buying a suit and a tie, shaving and all these things and practicing to appease. You can only go there with an endorsement of the president. By the way, not even NRM, let me just make it clear. If you don't have the endorsement of the sovereign of the country, who's His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, you'll never go to IALA. No shortcut.
He doesn't vote.
I've not said if you have his vote, I've said his blessing.
His blessing. He has the final...
The chairman of the NRM
yes.
will particularly choose the people who will go to IALA, and I can tell you why.
Is this under the NRM umbrella or
it is under the political practices of those who have big eyes like us, probably political big eyes or political glasses, to see beyond this harabaru of pretense and what. And the reason is simple. One, it is common knowledge that there is no other East African leader who is passionate about the East African community like His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. If you hear His Excellency talk about the East African community
with passion,
you just don't think you're going to send any Tom, Dick and Harry because you're talking about opposition. In fact, this is one of the smartest moves of Noop in answering the desires of His Excellency towards East African community. There are two things I know for a fact, and not for a long time that have lived, but they're small but long nevertheless. I have learned that the President of Uganda has passion about two things: the East African community and Pan-Africanism. So, for you to think you're going to go to the East African community, and the IALA, minus the blessing, and I'm being serious, not even the NRM Manya, this place in Chadon is called what? The Secretariat. It is a personal decision of the president because of his passion for the East African community. So this whole mimic and curtain raising that is happening in Parliament, the show is yet to happen. So these ones are seat feeders. They are warming the seats. These things that you've seen, campaigning, and I wonder why some senior politicians, and that speaks into the smartness of people like the Norbert Maus of this world, the Mukasa Ambides, who understood that the East African, anyone in the East African community must have a blessing from the President of Uganda, and that is simply attached to the passion he has for this community. Flat and square. What needs to be done? What needs to be done at the East African community level is to have what we call sane but patriotic representation. The representation at IALA is not on a party basis. It is on membership, country membership basis. Whether I've never had the Honorable Mukasambide from DP, even the Vice President at that point, at Yala saying, what Philomena is saying, that lady of NRM is not, I've not heard that. Probably I've been privy to, probably I'm third party to that information. But if even you revise the Hansards, the representation of Yala to East Africa is entirely a block representation.
Very true.
So it is very important, and again, to the NRM, let alone the president, that you send people who you can send actually, not the reverse. So when you talk about NRM taking majority, in fact, it is a mistake that these opposition people are gambling. It is only sanity that you cannot take this opposition politics, this pinching politics. One time, one of the leaders called it Malaya politics. This, you can't take it there because these are national matters. You know, it is nation vis-a-vis nation. Most recently, they have passed a law that is going to be at the bank, commercial bank, East African Commercial Bank. And now, you're having such argument, and for your own information, it is going to be sitting. Uganda is going to host. Now, imagine such deliberations, and you're carrying your internal political fights to such discussions.
Now, Felix, if I may just hold you a bit there, during the campaigns or the nominations, one of the contenders did say, because like you said, when you're there is nothing party related. You're now just on a block. But when it comes right here at the primary level, identifying the representatives, one of the contenders was saying it shouldn't be party based. That whole mentality that is right up there should be started with at the, at the primary level. If we are identifying our representatives, it shouldn't be party based. We shouldn't go for NRM only. We should be focused on people who are big passionate about the matters of the East African region. We should identify people who have experience. But we shouldn't look for people just because they are party based, because it's NRM, maybe because it's NUP, or it's DP. But why can't we carry that mentality right from the start? Why do we have to first go through this whole party base, and then when we get there, we now drop the party and we look at the East African region as a whole?
But is it logical?
I think
because
it is.
Here's the thing. Where does partisan politics stop? When do you put on the NUP coat and when do you put it off? That's the question.
Where you need any opportunity.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, if we cannot define the diameters or the perimeters where we leave the jacket, the DP jacket, the FDC jacket, then practice the NRM, like it is not logical. Because NRM is the government in power. Between you and me, there can only be one agenda per political term. You get it? Even the ideas fronted at the IALA are definitely the NRM. They must fall within the NRM manifesto for that political term. So there is no, you can run away from partisan practices back home and later on to the IALA forum. There is no way, because the big question is, when you say that Kirabo is a DP, but when he goes there, he will be neutral. When do you lose that jacket? But remember, you're coming on a chosen ticket, so it defeats the purpose. When you say you want to open it to the entire country openly, whose agenda are they going to float? It must line back to a recognized ideology. For example, there have been discussions about the standard gauge railway. Okay, when you get there now, what are you going to say? Because that must trickle into the development plan, infrastructure development plan of Uganda by the government of Uganda. Which government is NRM? As long as there is a leaning in political practice, if we are sending medical officers, we wouldn't bother checking DP because they are going to do physio work.
Yes.
But we're talking about political arguments, political debates, in as much as they will later on influence these others. So you may not be able to disseminate politics, and by far lining or leaning politics in this whole thing. However, for us right now, the most important thing as we look for this other thing, this subscription or election or whatever it is, we must later on, after understanding, and by the way, I can say this without fear of contradiction or doubt,
yes,
that we are better off not even wasting finances as he said, if you're not blessed by NRM, don't waste making posters.
You don't have
waste
a
buying
green
a suit, shaving your beard, what, trying to impress people, because clearly you're just sounding drums in the shallowness of their own selves. Our discussion should be to task the people that the NRM has given us.
To deliver.
Because if, I don't want to discuss blessing, because that's a fact. Just a fact. There is no miracle in this whole thing. Don't think even if you pray and my prayer mountains, what you shall move what. This particular one, let it be. It's an NRM direction. And I've told you, in my opinion,
yes,
this is a presidential appreciation. And it is only embarked in the concept of his passion about the East African community and Pan-Africanism. The only thing we should be discussing, what are you going to do for us? Let's talk about countries respecting the protocols, the community treaty, and later on, what are we adding? We talked about things like the federations, the political, monetary. We talked about the monetary, we talked about common markets, we talked about free movement. How far? How can the team we are going to send, endorsed by NRM, not forgetting, by the way, going to help us achieve these things? Talk about the closing of borders. We have been having herdsmen being arrested in Tanzania, Ugandans. You know what happens in Kenya in terms of labor. How many Ugandans have been thrown back to Uganda because they can't be given, you know, work permits because they say they are not Kenyans. But we talked about free trade, free change of labor. Go to Rwanda, 2 years, border is closed. No one is talking about, we can no longer do business in South Sudan today. People are being killed. Let's have that discussion. You want to talk about Congo? How many, the rebels? Let's talk about a common East African standby force, that if they are attacking, these are the discussions. These halabaru of let's vote Kirabo, for me, I find those very myopic, very shallow, and definitely launching in the depth of narrowness.
And now, basing from that argument, Felix's argument, Robert, we've also seen that opposition at one point did take this personally, but we are also seeing some uncoordination from, again, opposition when it comes to picking their representatives. Now, can we say that maybe the opposition doesn't appreciate some of the problems and some of the ideal solutions that will be put out there when it comes to the IALA? Because at one point we did see them fail to agree on a joint position when it comes to the IALA election. So the issue is really between NRM and opposition and the representation. So what does this really, where does this put the opposition when it comes to IALA generally? And maybe their school of thought when it comes to IALA?
Well, opposition consists of a number of political parties. And for the benefit of our viewers, some will just mention their leaders. You have FDC that has never run away from Chiza Besigye. If you want to talk about that party, though you have Patrick Amriat, but I think affairs there in the party,
yes,
are run differently. Now you have the likes of Jema with Asumani Wasalirwa, who says no. For us, we shall be part of this. You have FDC. I remember, I think even Mugisha Muntu was tried a slaughter, but he didn't succeed. I'll get the other. Now you have Noop, the new kid on the block. Unfortunately, happens to be the most popular as of late and as of the election we just had, and as of representation in parliament. Noop has the majority there. So opposition is kind of confused when it comes to this. Why am I saying so? There are those that better understand that we don't have, our odds do not show any way of us getting even a slot there. If Noop came, for example, Felix has told you, and I told you that earlier, that NRM has a great say. And I said the principal or their chairperson. Now, if circumstances have proven that you don't have even an iota of having any that you present chosen as would win a slot among the 9, why do you come? You have DP that we hear in the agreement that they made between DP and NRM. One of them was a ministerial post and also representation to Yara. So for them, they are coming on table when they know their slice of cake has already been cut and waiting for them to consume. You have FDC with the Harold Kaija who says, no, this time Maybe they have done some underground. You know, in politics, there are no permanent enemies, there are no permanent friends.
There's no underground. There's only on ground. So they
could have
what you see is
what I'm trying to say.
Why I call it NRM put concrete. So there's no
underground.
I'm talking about now FDC. You see, with the politics, there are those in these political parties things they will do that maybe the party members don't know. So that's what I call underground. Do you want to tell me when Norbert Mao was signing that agreement with NRM, every DP member knew? Some it was shock, but those who had to know. So in politics, you can never be sure of actions taken by the people in these political parties, because sometimes they take this for personal benefits, sometimes they take them for their vision of the party. So why now you're saying that some are saying we go? Because their odds are clear that yes, you're going to win. Why some are saying we don't go? Because they see, why would you participate in a competition where you know you're going to be beaten hands down? It ceases to have meaning and relevance. More so for those who don't just want to say we were also part, we also attended, we were part of the bandwagon. So that is why we are seeing these divisions within the opposition, that the way people come to take these 9 slots has a condition that you must have worked prior to, than just saying, let me speak well, let me be with the best credentials, members of parliament are going to listen to me and vote for me. Voting may not be on basis of credentials, on basis of ability, but it has other technicalities that may be technical knockouts to you. So that is why you find that a wise person may have seen through and said no. But also you must remember that there are people who come in every competition for different purposes. Some would come in because they want to be noticed and maybe have better bargaining power. Some to present themselves that have also been there.
Yes.
But you know, there's a scripture in the Bible
that I have the experience.
Felix can remind me, that says, in my Father's house there are many places. If it wasn't so. So there are those who come and say, our Father, we are here. I've been, since I left Parliament, I've been doing bad, now I've come as an independent. So when the big man is looking through that 28, hey, this one is still there, how have you been? Let's see what we are going to do for you. You know, so in competitions here, political competitions in this country, that is how we have, that is the position we've reached. That a person will disturb people, come in an election when he knows he's not going to win, but he knows this is an opportunity to get him closer to the powers that be, or be recognized, maybe for another better landing. Let us say, come, comrade. You've been there, yes. You go here. So that is where you have that some may make the 28 for other purposes.
Felix, you seem to have something off your mind.
Indeed. When Robert was submitting, something came to my mind, and I was thinking, does the parliament that do elect these people, when do they take time to evaluate our previous performance in terms of representation? I think that would be the best way for us to formalize how we take people there.
Yeah.
I think the kind of politics and the kind of team to bargain for Uganda always at the Iyala table has not served the purpose. I don't know.
So to interject, recently NRM said why they decided to retain their members that went on the NRM ticket is because they tremendously worked.
NRM has a right to say whatever they have to say.
Is there a solid evaluation to show?
To give them another time.
NRM has a right to see things the way it wants.
Yes.
I can't even stop them. That's their opinion, and they're entitled to it. But the Wananchi who has lost people in Sudan, who cannot cross the illegal border, the people who have suffered tremendously in terms of business transaction when the Rwanda border was closed for over 2 years, the herdsmen who have been killed, some beaten in Tanzania, you know, the people who have been deported back to Uganda from Kenya because they can't access working permits.
Yes.
The people who live on the borders of Congo, and they know what is going on, you know, who keep on receiving refugees every day, probably even now. And just to mention but a few, the people whose maize was thrown back from Kenya, the people whose milk was interjected,
and the chicken as
and
well.
I can keep going and on
but
and on
that
and
also
on.
brings you, much as these members of parliament have much to do, but when you look at the treaty, also the entire East African Community Treaty has issues of where certain states' independence, sovereignty is a very big issue there, that even this agreement, much as there are certain things it tackles, but when it comes to where states are independent, you can only discuss on brotherhood. But
You know,
there isn't binding
So meaning
laws
that
for
there are also loopholes in the
Yes,
treaty.
that's why you see that the Uganda-Rwanda border issue, the community could not.
Do you know the law-making body of the community?
Could not come up.
Do you know the law-making body of the community?
It could be different to what I know.
In every setup, the legislative arm is in charge of what? Of making the laws. So you're simply, actually what you're saying is an assertion of their misnomer, of their not doing what they should be doing. If in your opinion the issue is the law, then they have not done what they should do, because they sit in the chambers that make the laws. I think for us, Philo, for me lastly, we have not gotten very much to the latter value for Iyala.
Yes.
We need to do more as we send these people.
Person, yes.
And among the few things I've mentioned, there are very many. However, we have achieved. It is unfair for me to say that there's nothing. Today we can move across with our, is it Nangamuntu?
The national ID, yes.
Today we have the East African passports.
For some of the East African countries.
I have been privileged to
Even
appreciate
Court
the
of Justice.
benefits. Anywhere else in Europe, the people respect a block passport. It's a big deal, by the way, just so you know. So that among very many others. We are talking about now the pipeline, Tanzania and Uganda, the oil and these, just very many. There's a political dimension to pick. All these things are good, but we still need to move faster to fast track the things that we agreed in the additional protocols to the treaty. Things like integration, political, monetary, you know, just to mention but a few. The free trade, the markets. These are the things we want to discuss. But this...
Well, I guess we need more evaluation when it comes to performance of the previous representatives, and we should use that as one of the bases, or a blocking, rather a building block on who to send next. I think it would make much more sense. Well, Parliament is expected to be electing Iyala representatives today. The question is, who is going to be among the 9 lucky ones to take, you know, some...
Funny thing is, Ugandans don't even know the people who are standing, and those who have already been. If you ask any Ugandan off head, and I don't want to ask you, Philo, I don't want to ask Robert either, nor do I want you to ask me. So,
well, we're going in for some of the big stories when it comes to our papers, and definitely I'm pretty sure this is going to be making some of the headlines. We'll be back right after this break.
I remember the lockdown, when the streets were empty and our lives disrupted, when businesses closed and our livelihoods hung in the balance. Hospitals were full. We lost loved ones, jobs, and hope. Our children couldn't study anymore. We cannot let this happen again. We should not go back. Get fully vaccinated against COVID-19 and join the millions of Ugandans who are already vaccinated.
season. Forget the oohs and the ahs. Forget every moment that stole the show, because the real show is here on GoTV. It's the new season. It's action-packed, and it's going to be non-stop football. With over 1,000 games from more than 7 leagues and cup competitions plus a World Cup. Make sure you get the best seat in the house this new football season. Get a GoCoder with 1 month of GoTV value for only 25,000 Uganda shillings and enjoy non-stop football. GoTV Uganda. Love it.
The prolonged closure of schools during the COVID-19 lockdowns exposed institutional failures such as weak law enforcement, negative social practices, parenting challenges, and the general vulnerability of children, especially girls. Government of Uganda, through Ministry of Education and Sports, invites you to participate at a high-level regional dialogue under the auspices of the National Campaign to Address Defilement, Teenage Pregnancy, Child Marriage, and Promote Positive Parenting. The overall purpose of the campaign is to mobilize the country to address these challenges and to promote positive parenting. The campaign under the slogan, Protect the Girls, Save the Nation, is championed by the First Lady and Minister for Education and Sports, Vice President and Prime Minister. The 3 champions will be in attendance at the dialogue, scheduled for 29th September 2022 at 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. at Wanyange Girls School in Jinja District.
This is Good Morning Uganda.
The Daily Monitor this morning is starting off with 5 doctors catching Ebola. And of course, President Museveni rules out lockdown over Ebola outbreak. This was during his national address yesterday. Now, on line of duty, authorities said the health workers, 5 doctors and an aesthetic officer who are now in isolation for treatment, caught the infectious disease from patients. While in more stories, relatives failed to reach Chapa Karhanga, and government to recruit more medics to manage maternal deaths, and KCCA hands over digital revenue collection system. And moving to Amuru, civil servants turn to money lenders to refund stolen PDM cash. Of course, when accountability comes in, all has to be done to make sure that that money comes back. Nabanja Chinese envoy to meet over Isimba Dam, and schools reject directive of registered suppliers. Moving on to the second page of the Daily Monitor, court rejects a bid to combine 2 case files of jailed MPs. And taking you back in history, today Amin recruits Britons into Uganda Army, and Congress Act legalizes current US military.
Now, crossing over to the New Vision for this morning, Ebola, Museveni issues guidelines and no closure of public facilities, President assures. That is a story on page 3 of the New Vision for this morning, but they also give you a picture right there at with the best teachers as they start the Ireland study tour. That was yesterday at the ambassador's residence in Kampala. Now, in crime, traffickers target children in refugee camps, 120 missing. That is a story on page 7 of the New Vision. But also with economy, government releases 5 billion shillings in grants for persons aged 60 to 79. That is also on page 10 of the New Vision. Now, crossing over to the second page, Uganda provided great solace at Queen's death, the UK envoy says, and they give you some of the pictures right there. But also Swedish embassy earmarks the 46 billion shillings for the youth. That is more detailed in the New Vision for this morning.
Daily Monitor Sports. Reeling in Cairo, the day's best player was Emmanuel Jakisa, who returned 1/73, including 4 bodies to move 12 places up to join 23rd and become the leading Ugandan with a score of 151 gross. That is, of course, in the game of golf. And they're showing you that Uganda's foursome at the African Championship in Egypt, which is yet to adapt to the greens and drive well. Now, looking at FIFA World Cup, 52 days to go. France great Henry fears VAR killing joy of football. I don't know what people would have to say, but I feel like VAR has done more good than harm, if I must say. UEFA Nations League, Spain in semis. Alvaro Morata's late strike snatched Spain a 1-0 Nations League victory over Portugal in Braga on Tuesday and sent them into the semi-finals. And also looking at some more stories, Congolese Legion officer offers Vipers genuine title hopes. And Africa T20 Cup win draws Uganda closer to World Cup.
And crossing over to the New Vision Sport, the Villa is a team in transition. That is an inside story. How far Villa has gone and what they have achieved, that is all there for you in the New Vision Sport. But also they give you a section of Arua Hill Stadium project, whose expected date of delivery has been pushed ahead for 13 months by the contractor. Well, it looks like it is 13 months to go, as football lovers in West Nile will have to wait another 13 months before completion of the long-awaited Arua Hill Stadium. They give you some of the pictures right there on how far it is supposed to go. And of course, also talking about boxing, a reprieve for boxing. Now, the boxing fraternity worldwide now has a breather. That is after the International Olympic Committee confirmed guidelines for qualification to the Paris 2024 Games that will be taking place over there, what teams need, and of course looking at also the associations of the National Olympic Committees for Africa, what they stand a chance to gain from that. But also KCCA FC is slow but sure, looking at what they have been doing with the reconstruction of the Philip Omondi Stadium at Lugogo, as that work also continues. That and more stories in the sports section.
Now moving on to the Daily Nation, 13th Hegman to die. And this is quite a criminal puzzle, where lawyer Paul Gicheru, who was on Monday evening found unconscious in his bedroom, was awaiting an international criminal court verdict in a few weeks on whether he bribed witnesses that were to testify in the collapse trial of President William Ruto. He was 52 and did not have any serious ailments and rarely left his house at the upscale Northwood Villas on Nyonyintono Lane in Karen. Well, definitely death of an ICC suspect obviously brings in some more in-depth investigations that will be expected. Now, looking at also government, how Ruto settled on cabinet nominees and rewarding loyalty, ensuring regional balance, the need to avoid the fate of his predecessor, Uhuru Kenyatta, who paid the political price for over-reliance on the technocrats. And give up land or pay 1.7 million Kenyan shillings for junk car, distressed man told, looking at, of course, a dispute like that. And 4 million to be removed from debt list. Kenyans are actually set to enjoy cheaper daily visa costs, even as President William Ruto yesterday told the Central Bank of Kenya to speed up removal of about 4 million individuals negatively listed on credit reference bureaus for defaulting on loan payments. Well, that and many more stories in all the different dailies, so make sure that you grab yourself a copy of each and see what is happening over there. But also moving on to our traffic updates this morning, before we go to the traffic updates, maybe just to take you through some of the Ebola awareness that you need to know. It is a serious and often deadly disease, and when it comes to the transmission, it's quite easy to avoid, but if you don't do it, you could actually fall victim. Now, you should know that body fluids such as blood, saliva, fecal matter, vomit, urine and sweat of an infected person definitely can be part of the ways that you could get yourself infected with the Ebola disease. And unsterilized equipment used by an infected person definitely is also one of other ways you need to look out for. And handling wildlife, whether alive or dead, could also be another way that Ebola virus could be, transmitted to you as an individual. So as much as you can, try to make sure that you are, you're not anywhere in the vicinity of some of these things. Keep the distance, wear your masks as of course advised by the Ministry of Health, but also most importantly, wash your hands with soap. Okay, and finally, you can report all suspected cases to your nearest health center. And also, when it comes to prevention, well, like I did say, you can prevent it. Avoid direct contact with body fluids from any person or animal suspected of being infected with Ebola or, affected with Ebola. And then, if you must handle a patient suspected to be suffering from Ebola, make sure that you wear protective material. I'm talking about gloves, I'm talking about masks, etc, etc. And persons who are suspected to have died from Ebola must be buried immediately and by a trained burial team. And now this is of course to prevent the spread of Ebola. And in case you handle a person suspected to be infected with Ebola, make sure that you wash your hands thoroughly with soap and clean water. All that is to make sure that we avoid, the transmission, and we also try as much as we can to prevent ourselves from catching this virus. It is around there, and of course, keep looking out for more information and updates coming in from the Ministry of Health, a trusted source. Picking information from anywhere else could also lead you to being misinformed. But getting onto our roads this morning, going through Rubaga Division, I must start off with Albert Cook Road this morning, and I must say that the traffic already there is quite very, very heavy. The biggest percentage of this road is already covered with this intense traffic. We are seeing a lot of the red stretches are building up for most of these parts of the road. So if this is your area of residence, or if it's part of the usual routes that you use to town, I could say that it's going to be a little bit, chaotic for you this morning. And as you can see all the way here on Albert Cook Road, I must say that the traffic is not saving you any minute, is not cutting you any slack. You will have to go through it all the way as you're headed, of course, towards town. And also looking at Kisingiri Road, which still leads you to the main road over here. We are seeing some heavy traffic over here as cars are trying to join in onto the main road. And even this shortcut, matter of fact, is also busy already as it is this morning. So yes, I could say that you don't have an escape route as you find your way around it. And of course, looking at Chadondo Road all the way, I could say it's a bit free this morning. As I speak right now, it's quite easy for you to navigate. We haven't yet seen any traffic building up here, but like I already say, I mean, there are changes, and you could be expecting some build up much later on as the day goes by. Hoima Road, on the other hand, is already heavy with the traffic. It's quite intense on the spot over here, and it goes on all the way, so you wouldn't run away from it, even if that was the intention. Looking at Sir Apollo Kagwa Road, well, I must say that it is actually already busy this morning. We are seeing the traffic that has already overtaken the biggest part of it. We're seeing the red stretches that are taking over. So yes, I could say the traffic is already heavy over there. Looking at Gaddafi Road as you're headed towards Makere, well, the traffic again is already over here. We do have all these stretches and quite a longer one here with the traffic that has already taken over. So yes, coming in from all these areas, I must say that you don't have any way around it. And Makere Hill Road is also quite very busy this morning. We're already seeing the dots, the red dots and the oranges showing that the traffic has already become dominant over there. Well, that's it from the traffic updates this morning, and also just to let you know about our Iyala elections that will be happening today. They'll be running live on UBC TV, so if you want to catch all the details, make sure that it is right here on UBC TV where they will be coming to you live. I will now leave you to Mollen to give you all the updates coming in, of course, from weather and news, and maybe much later on tell us what the weather could be looking like today. Have a wonderful Thursday morning. I am Philomena Mastiko.
Well, thank you. Let me take it from there. Now we are still looking at more news coming in about the Hurricane Ian that has now created a very, very strong storm surge across most areas of Florida. This is one of the worst hit areas so far. We're looking at Fort Myers, and of course a lot of people are already on power shortage. We're looking at over 2 million people with power shortages. And of course, there is also reports of a boat that capsized across the area due to Hurricane Ian. And what we do know so far is that 20 people are missing who were on this boat. Now, you look at how far this storm is actually going. It is taking in a lot of winds. And across a video of what is happening right now from the Weather Channel is just showing how much a storm surge is over the area. That means that is also taking down buildings, taking out power lines, and of course this is where much of the damage is. We're talking about Fort Myers right as we speak, and of course more of the damages that were done even from yesterday when it was just over the shores. Now it did make landfall as a category 4, and at that level it was bringing in a lot of damages across the area. Now also you look at the people within this region, they haven't experienced something like this before, and they're saying that in over 100 years they haven't seen actually a storm like this, especially hitting that close to home. And that is what we know so far coming in from Fort Myers. But also the Weather Channel still continues to issue out more of the tracking and of course what is happening, especially in Tampa Bay, where most of the effects were seen even from yesterday. And of course, that is what brought in more of their concerns. But also, you look at most of the people talking about this, also relating it to the fact that you know, Florida has had its fair share of storms over the years. But again, what is posing a challenge with Hurricane Ian is that it is developing at a very fast rate, and the intensification is just so high. It is even causing a lot of flooding across the cities. If you look at some of the images that are coming through, people are frustrated. This really caught my eye. Just a picture on the street saying, "Go home, Ian." People are not ready for this. But you also look at some of the buildings that were submerged with the flooding across Fort Myers, and of course this, you know, up to the roof. That shows you how much the waters were pouring in. And of course right now it is still on a track for more intensification. Now the forecast earlier was indicating that actually the hurricane could go down as it made landfall to Florida, but it looks like that is not the case. It continues to develop and could be bringing in much more of the flooding. Now, according to what the National Hurricane Center is also forecasting with this storm surge, they're looking at you know, what was happening within the past 48 hours, but also where it is right now. And this information just came in just like 40 minutes ago, showing that it is now at 5.7 feet. That means that that is where the flooding comes from, off the ground. You can imagine that kind of water that would bury, you know, short buildings at a lower level or even within the low-lying areas. And that is what we're looking at Wednesday, and of course just a few minutes ago as the information comes in from the National Hurricane Center. But they're also looking at more of the key messages that are coming through, bringing in more of alerts on catastrophic events that are expected. But also you look at over 2 million people and businesses that are without power in Florida. And of course this causes a lot of concerns, especially with public health as well. Most of the hospitals that do depend on this, if this goes on for more than 12 hours, they could be looking at a lot of catastrophic events that could result from that. Now, most of the areas that are also having this region as across Orlando, Tampa Bay, of course, it did start off with most of those effects even yesterday. We're looking at Sarasota, Kenyena and Port Charlotte that are also in the forecast for most of these effects that are coming in from Hurricane Ian. And of course, they are also looking at it as a form of a Category 1 hurricane, especially when it makes landfall for these areas. But the worst case scenarios, I think, have been reported across Florida and Fort Myers. And of course, this adds to the many hurricane events that have been, a threat to the U.S. And over the years, I think the most memorable one is Hurricane Maria, that did take a lot of lives, and of course did bring with it a lot when it comes to storm surge flooding. It's not their first, look at storm surge flooding, the flooding that could actually take out the entire city or capsizing boats across the island. This is just, one thing after the other, and most of these events have been reported all within a period of 5 years. That is how intense it is getting, and this has also prompted the U.S. government to talk more about climate action. What we do know is that President Joe Biden has been moving towards making sure they have enough systems to actually go with clean energy. And just a few months ago, he did bring into law one of the bills to actually talk more about climate actions, and that was moved to look at clean energy, renewable energy, away from the fossil fuels that have been used across the U.S. And yesterday also the report that was coming through was about, the U.S. moving, especially for wind energy, as an alternative from, the usual power lines that they have had. And this could be as a cross range for a lot of areas. They have the money to do this, to move towards renewable energy, but of course all along there was a lot of political pressure, and of course the climate skeptics as well, thinking that this will be money that is put into an area where they are not seeing the effects. But also it's not like a blessing in disguise when you look at more of the effects that are happening, the hurricanes that are happening, the heat waves, the fires, the wildfires. It goes to show that it's no longer about the climate skeptics, it's about what they are experiencing. And of course it was at that time that they realized they can no longer put away with most of these climate actions. And I think also President Joe Biden joining back into the Paris Agreement was a first sign, and of course now they're bringing in more information to get alternatives with wind energy. And that is also one thing that we are hoping for. And also COP27 presidency did come out to say that this is what they're expecting from a lot of other regions as we head towards Egypt. And of course one of the things that they did put across especially were about the nationally determined contributions that are now accounting for 12% of global emissions and 24% of world's population, being at a line, especially as you look at most of these countries that are party to the Convention on Climate Change. What are they planning on doing, especially with clean energy? That is the route that we should all be headed for, because we know most of these events are not random. They are all coming up because temperatures are rising in the atmosphere, causing most of these events, causing favorable conditions for hurricanes to develop, for tropical cyclones to develop. And the only way to tone down these temperatures, to take down these temperatures, is if we can avoid getting emissions, that is the greenhouse gases, into the atmosphere. And one way to do that is phasing out fossil fuels. That's the connection right there. And COP27 presidency is saying, look, this is our message. And of course, we expect a lot of countries to also bring in their contributions with related to what is happening right now across the world, but also what they will be bringing in to Egypt as we talk about this November. And of course, most of it is geared towards making sure that we are away from the climate effects, talking more how we can live with it, how we can control loss and damage. And that is the key message right there with COP, looking at what we've been dealing with over the years. Now, away from that, we also want to take a look at what is happening across the country and how the weather is like for this morning. Tapping in from our satellites, mostly it has been cloudy across the southern part of the region. We're looking at southwestern Uganda, parts of Kabale already having those cloudy weather. Looks like that will be bringing us rains also in the morning across southwestern Uganda where we have those quite deep blue colors. That is where we also expect some rains. Also, that will be taking in southwestern Uganda, areas of Mbarara. You can expect to have a little bit of those rains as the morning progresses. We also have a system that is starting to develop across Lake Victoria, and of course that is the one that is also likely to bring rains across areas of eastern Lake Victoria Basin, Tororo, Jinja. You look at areas within Wakiso and Kampala, also likely to have a little bit of those rains. But again, it is quite a sunny morning across most areas within Central, Mubende, Nakasongola, Luwero, Woblenzi, looking at quite a sunny morning for you right there. That crosses over into Midwestern Uganda, also just a mix of clouds and sunshine. We'll have much of Northern Uganda and the Karamoja region also having to deal with in terms of sunny and cloudy conditions. Looks like it's going to be quite a sunny morning as well across Eastern Uganda, Soroti and Muria. You can expect lots of sun for this morning. But we're seeing some systems that are starting to develop across the northwestern part of the country, that is across West Nile. We do expect rains over that area for this morning, and of course that is also moving towards the Choga region, so we could be looking at a little bit of rains crossing over for areas of Lira. You also look at areas of Gulu, and those will be just over a few areas. And for this morning, looks like temperatures are quite low for the southern sector, but again it is quite soaring temperatures for the northern sector as well as the Karamoja region. Well, that is it in terms of weather for this morning. Later than this, we're going to be having Good Morning Uganda agenda, and of course bringing you some of the sports highlights, after which we will be taking you for Good Morning Uganda Extra. Well, my name is Mollen, Kenyena. I want to wish you a wonderful day.
This is Good Morning Uganda.
Pick of the day on UBC. Was brought to you by
Simply make a small deposit of 99k and pay the balance mpola. You can pay in daily, weekly or even monthly installments while you enjoy your new phone. So what are you doing today? Visit any MTN shop near you and get the MTN cupboard. That's super easy.
Welcome to English in a Minute. Whitewash is a liquid used for painting things like walls and fences.
whitewash.
Okay, the boss just told me the company is only cutting a few jobs. She said not to worry.
How is that supposed to make me feel better? Steve just got fired today.
But she said the company is fine.
Sounds like she's trying to whitewash the problem.
When you whitewash something, you cover its natural condition with whiteness. Whitewash can make surfaces look clean. But in conversation, whitewashing means to make something wrong or illegal look okay. It is a way of hiding a truth or covering up unpleasant facts. And that's English in a Minute.
Every waking day is a reminder just how beautiful this, our land, truly is. The kind of beauty that you can only find here, in the lush green all around us and the wondrous sights within. It's in the distinct aroma of our cooking, to the taste of food that takes you on a journey, in the sound of homecoming and the sound of Mother Earth. In the magnificence we find on our travels and the exciting moments we experience. Ours is the kind of beauty that comes in all things big and small. All we have to do is awaken our senses and truly enjoy what's uniquely ours. Explore Uganda, the pearl of Africa.
Live from Nile Avenue in UBC Studios. This is Good Morning Uganda.
Lovely morning to you once again, and thank you so much for being with us here on UBC TV. Welcome to Good Morning Uganda Agenda. Now here you have our guest in studios, and what we do is you're also free to be part of the topic of discussion. This morning we are going to be discussing something very interesting on our roads. I know you have heard, or you've witnessed, or you've seen through social media or any media outlet or channel what is called towa fujo kwa barabara. This is where we've seen government cars being impounded, government officials being given express penalty tickets to go and pay in the bank. This is where we've seen some people knowing that if you don't have a right of way, truly you don't. Some knowing these lights you put on your vehicles make them look like Christmas trees or something like that. There is so much that is in this operation. And joining me on set is the man who is in charge of traffic in Kampala Metropolitan, the traffic commandant, Kawuma Nsereko Rogers. And I don't forget to add on Sarongo. He's with me this morning. Sarongo, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
How have you been?
Good. Yourself?
Very okay, just enjoying what I'm seeing.
Wow.
And of course appreciating the determination.
Thank
because this is something that police over time had talked about. I don't want to mention who was the commander. I think I remember my very good friend, I'm tempted to mention, Dr. Stephen Kasima, would always tell me when I host him, we are going to go for them, we are going to go for them. But nothing had been in place. So it gives me joy to see sanity restored on our roads. Some people have lost even ribs because if you're driving, then some, I don't want to use a harsh word, only to look at a creature in a kafane car, in a what, going nowhere. A car bypasses you like that, then they park at the next band. Like, supposing I caused an accident while giving way. So I'm very happy that this is happening.
Thank you. And you are not the only one. So many people are very happy about this operation. And we are still carrying on with the same until when sanity returns on our roads.
Okay. Yes. Now let's begin by informing our viewers, those that may not be knowing what you're talking about. When you talk about Towa Fujo kwa Barabara, this operation was launched on the 19th. I remember the mouthpiece, Police for Traffic, Farida Nampima, saying we've started today. Now it's ongoing. So what are you looking out for?
Yes.
Who are those that may face the wrath of police and some areas I've seen also military alongside with you are enforcing sanity on the roads?
Absolutely. There has been a lot of outcry on road users who are doing this, who prompted for this operation to take place. We realized that so many people had put sirens in their cars, put those swiveling lights in their cars, and then they were now bulldozing everyone off the road. So the situation was getting out of hand. And we sat an interagency meeting that involved police, traffic police, CMI, military police, and we came up with this, what you see now on the roads. And we are all on the same page because initially traffic officers were being minimized, and I think these other people thought that it is a traffic thing. You get it. So they were underlooking traffic officers, demeaning their instructions, of course pulling out guns on us. It is not a new phenomenon. And now that they see that we are actually a team, they now know that it is a serious matter. I don't want to believe that then, before we had the military on board, they didn't know that it was a bad thing. Because this is a habit that began in the recent past. It is not a very old habit. It began in the recent past, where people now wear testing the waters, and then they are keeping right. They put those traveling lights, the sirens, and then they start driving on the right of the road.
Some even went to an extent of removing number plates.
Absolutely.
Someone deliberately removes the number plate.
Yes,
just to drive without a number plate.
You need to ask yourself, for what intention does someone remove number plates? What for?
Status.
What are you?
You can drive a car without a number plate.
No, but I mean,
Munene.
Why do you even go and get it in the first place and then you remove it? Does it make sense? Yeah. Even if you are Munene, if you want, like some of these celebrities have, personalized number plates, and it is legal. You can get you can put Kirabo on the number plate. It's
very
allowed.
Expensive. It's between about 50.
Yes, it depends on your wallet, but people do it anyway. So the car, the name of the car is the number plate. For us, that's how we recognize cars, because once we are in our CCTV rooms and we need to trace for certain vehicles, we don't put that Primo. Look for this Primo. We put the number plate of the car, because that's the identifying character of that car. So removing it means you have bad intentions, you don't want to be traced, you get it. So all these are categories of people who were doing this. A car passes, it has no number plate, it has traveling lights, it is overlapping, it is giving on the right, and we need orderliness in the city. Yes.
Now, talking about orderliness in the city, let me first remind our viewers that anytime we'll be moving to Parliament, where there is going to be Yala elections, that is the East Africa Legislative Assembly, members of Parliament will be electing our representatives to, that is the East Africa Legislative Assembly. So anytime we'll be going there for you to follow how the exercise is going to be. But back to the operation we are talking about. How smooth has it been? I've seen some officers running, I've seen some still trying to bulldoze, make U-turns.
Yes.
I've seen those convicted, and yes, much as they are what we call big shots, they appreciate the operation. I've seen a number of people there, they'll tell you number plates. You've mastered that art. In a second, number plate is off.
Within no minutes.
Within no minutes. Yeah. So how is the operation moving on?
I'm happy to report that we are very happy about the operation. We are seeing some good degree of change on the road. You hear less of sirens these days.
Yes.
Yeah. And they are with those that have them are those people who are supposed to have them. So we are happy about it. People are being compliant. However, those hard ones, of course, we stop them and we have those gadgets removed. The sirens and the lights are removed at the nearest police station. We have our IOVs as part of the operation, inspect of vehicles. They are part of the operation, and once we impound your vehicle, the IOV is on ground to have them removed. You get it. So those that don't need to waste time have removed the lights themselves, and we are good to go. Yes.
Now, one said this is double punishment. You remove my lights, then I get a ticket.
Yeah, depending on what you've done. Because you can, if we can identify the lights, but you are in your queue, that is different. But you have the lights, and then you are overlapping, yeah, or keeping on the right of the road and blocking oncoming traffic, that's different. We shall remove the lights and also issue you with a ticket. But if you are in your lane and you are with the lights, we shall just remove the lights and the siren if you are on your lane.
Very interesting. Also, I know you're not URA, but as police, people were saying, why let these be freely available, freely sold? Then we see police come to enforce the laws.
I think if people were not abusing them, you get it, because it is because of the misuse of those lights that has prompted this operation. I believe if it wasn't for the misuse of those gadgets, okay, then we wouldn't have a problem. You would beautify your car the way you want it. But then people are using them wrongly. Because now once someone installs them, it is like a leeway that you have a right of way.
Yes.
You get it? Which is not the case. So it is unfortunate that it has turned out this way, but I mean, it is what it is because you brought it upon yourselves. And we have nothing to do now. Now it has become a policy that we don't want those lights in private cars.
Now, Afande, also help our viewers understand who are the people, because this operation looks at first right of way. It looks at sirens. Recently, I saw our sister Nampima talk about even funeral vans, that they should not have these sirens and the lights.
No, they don't have to.
But maybe someone may have never enjoyed them during life, and maybe this is their final send-off. They want to be take them as a VIP to their grave. Also, asking, why are you rushing a dead body? It's not in panic.
Absolutely.
It's going to be buried.
Absolutely.
Then you're also looking at, there's one instance, I saw jackets for that, or the soldier or police, and your plain clothes, and you have a jacket. You're also getting that. But one thing that comes to my mind is, when we see all these operations happening and people appreciating, is this sustainability? Because at the end of the day, Ugandans are very smart. Once they believe this is done, then we are back. Install these and we are back on the road. So how sustainable is it? Or is it going to be like many operations we've had? Once Masaka Road had accidents, a lot of accidents, there's an operation, kind of reduced, but now you see the whole trend is happening, over speeding, and more so, being that for traffic officers in Uganda, many of them have this common problem. I don't know if it is a of deployment, that they are predictable where they are. I can tell you, if you're coming from Masaka, I can tell you every spot where you're going to find a roadblock or traffic officers. If I'm driving from Entebbe, I'll tell you here and then. If there are shortcuts, pass here. So that also fits the purpose, that even in this, you could have missed some, and others know that it's just a moment of time. Keep your car.
Well, about sustainability, it is, I find it rather absurd that you need police to be there for you to keep the law. It is a very sad situation. I mean, if you know that we are under this law and it guides us to do A, B, C, D, and then for you to keep the law, I have to be there so that you follow the law. Isn't it absurd?
Very.
I don't need to be on the ground. You just need to know that overtaking at this point is not right. Driving on the right side, on the opposite side of the road, facing the other side of oncoming traffic is not right. Yeah? And then you'll be within the limits of the law. You don't have to wait for me, the police officer, to come there to tell you what to do. You get it? It is not right. It is wrong. So for every good citizen, I believe, you've heard of generals who keep in their lanes. Yeah? No matter how the traffic is, they will keep in their lane.
There's one I know.
They are on people's fingertips. You'll never find so-and-so doing this. You'll never find so-and-so doing this. So what are those people? What are they? What kind of citizens are they?
And you find
then what kind of these others who do it? What kind of citizens are they? You get it? So it goes back to self-discipline. Self-discipline. I mean, if you say, so the officers are not there, now let me beat the lights. Is it right? It is not right. So sustainability is for all of us, for you and me, as a Ugandan. If you want an organized society, please, let's try to limit ourselves within the law. Out of the law, then, it is anarchy and chaos. So which is really absurd. Yeah? But for us, we're there on the road. Once we catch you, I mean, I believe you know the law. By the time you are given a good office, you should be knowing some of the basics of how to manage yourself. Otherwise, you wouldn't be there. I believe so.
And now, still looking at this operation, dear viewers, we're looking at Operation Toa Fujo kwa Barabara that police began on the 19th, and they say it is ongoing to ensure there is sanity on our roads. Do not overlap, do not drive on the wrong side. Make sure a one-way is a one-way. Yes, you have this big wagon, you paid a lot of money to purchase it, there are few cars of that type, but you're not a VIP, you're not entitled to the right of way. Yes, you have this beautiful car, you've put all kinds of lights. Even when you go to the village, people think a minister's come, but you're not one. Please remove them before the powers do.
Be simple,
be simple, be calm.
Yeah.
Have your number plates on, because police say they will nab you. Now this brings me also to understand, in these operations, is it all about removing an express penalty, or does it involve even arrest?
It depends on the demeanor of the driver. Yeah, because if the driver is non-compliant, abusive, you know, like, we can take it a notch higher, and we say now we are actually even arresting you. On top of, we can produce you to court, we can give you a ticket, we can forgive you, yeah, but the demeanor of the driver determines the action of the police officer taking action against him. Yes.
We've also heard that much as these operations have done us good, but we've had people who say that the usual culture of I'll move with something is also in these operations. Have you experienced such cases? And
as in case, corruption?
Yes, the usual culture. That is our culture. We know you move for traffic offenses.
That is a very bad statement, that it is our culture.
It has been, okay, it has become, but that is reality.
Bad statement.
But it is reality.
It's not,
for traffic offenses, first get some pocket change.
You have to be
and
armed.
what is very annoying is how much they give. Wait
a minute, Mr. Kirabo.
One time I told people, you can't respect our uniform. 4,000, 5,000. One time I hired someone to take me. I was to my farm there in Luwero, and I was shocked. I told this person I had forgot about this operation of APS defaulters. So I move, then we are stopped. Says, Ninebi Papura. Like, now look at you. You're having a commercial vehicle and you don't pay these things? I see the man fidgeting, picks 5,000. Yeah, very fast actually. That's why I gets out and says, tugende. Like, but today, Papa. Of the what day I said, with this uniform, even at 5,000 for such offense.
Now,
at least
okay, how much should it be?
It shouldn't be there in the first place.
Thank you.
But
that's what I wanted to hear from you.
But I find it very degrading.
No. Even if it was 10,000, even if it is 5,000, even if it is 2,000, none of it is right.
Definitely.
You get it? None of it. None of that.
But let's let the corruption be deterrent.
So
yes, that someone knows. Let me pay this.
No.
Because when I'm gotten, but
no. No amount should be right.
Very true.
As long as it is called termed corruption. Because one, it takes two to tango. You, the giver, and me, the receiver, are answerable for that case of corruption. So it should be zero tolerance to corruption. But if you choose to corrupt our officer, it is entirely...
And they choose to accept.
And they choose to accept. I mean, you will find some who won't accept your corruption. Your corruption. They won't. But some...
Yesterday I witnessed some at a livestock checkpoint. I want to commend that officers, that is around Bombo there's that animal checkpoint where there are police officers and what. You guys, you're doing a tremendous job. I want to appreciate you. I saw a corrupt, there was a lorry that came with cows, and I think they had some documents, and they thought, but these guys, they told me, so I want to thank them. I don't know their names, I didn't get them, but they are doing a tremendous job. I stopped there, I had my animal, and I saw that yes, those guys are serious, they are good at what they are doing. If you don't have a document, even if it means you park your car and go get that clearance, you'll do it.
Those are good cases. And we have such cases in traffic as well. So I will tell you that as long as you are ready to part with the money to give a traffic officer, I want you to know that that traffic officer is a human being and he also needs money. So where I have a problem with a traffic officer is when the traffic officer demands that you give me money. You get it? So that I let you off the hook. That is another issue. But where you, Mr. Kirabo, pull out your wallet and you give the officer money. Officers have problems too, like you do. You get it? So what am I saying? Just don't give our officers money. Okay? Let them proceed with the case the way they should. Because now you are putting all these hurdles so that you be let off the hook by bribing our officers. Okay? So it is very hard to say no to money. You get it? Otherwise, all of us would be where we are. You know, in the comforts of our homes and whatever, and we don't wake up in the morning to come and do something so that you change your lives. So please don't corrupt our officers. Let officers do their work.
Very interesting, and I hope Ugandans have heard where you should, if the law says park your vehicle as you wait for court, or the inspector of vehicles. You know, if you're in a road accident, they say your vehicle has to go to the IOV. There, you know.
But it is procedure.
Time wasted.
It is procedure.
All this and all that.
It is procedure. The file has to have the IOV's report.
And then they want my car parked.
Of course, they won't check it from your home.
Now that is where you see the drama.
Yes.
That's
it has to be at the police station, or you have to drive it to the IOV's offices in Naguru for it to be inspected.
The traffic things are very complicated.
They're not.
Very complicated.
They're not, actually.
I think even the laws and the atmosphere also sometimes promote people when they look at the inconveniences. They are tempted, but however, we all must fight corruption. Well, allow me also, it is time I want to look at some of the messages, just to let you know that our viewers, we are going to be having feedback from you people regarding this operation. We need to hear from you. How have you been affected by this operation? If not so, well, still we want to know what are your views, what are your opinions on the ongoing operation by police. Toa fujo kwa barabara. We do not want this indiscipline on our roads. So please, you can send us a message simply on our social media platforms on the number on your screen, which is 0709 60 25 92. 0709 60 25 92. And I guarantee you I'll be reading out the messages, and my guest in studios, who happens to be the traffic commandant, Kampala Metropolitan, Sarongo Rogers Kawuma Sereko, will be responding to all of them. Have you been a victim of this, or are you the ones appreciating? Have you been that notorious, even still with this operation? There is one person who made a U-turn and almost finished all of us on the road, simply because he sensed that in Sereko, Kawuma was ready and team to get this. But also, you've said this operation has gone very smooth. What have been the challenges?
Of course, the challenges are there. We still have people who think that they should keep doing what they do. You get it? Which is funny, because we are all under the law. No one is above the law. You imagine a scenario where an official keeps right of the road, and then a boda follows from behind, and then you let the other official, or non-official for that matter, pass on the right, and then borders following are stopped and penalized. It is not a fair game. We have to play fair. The law is fair to each and every one of us. The one that touches a border is the one that should touch an official or a celebrity. Some of these celebrities have also turned out to be something else on the road. So the law should bite all of us equally. It is not a selective law. Otherwise, they should amend and say, now, so and so, so and so, so and so, so and so, should keep right over the road when they're moving. Then we shall not have any problems with that. But until then, for us, we are here to enforce the law as it is.
Well, one coming in, good morning UBC, thanks for the show. Mr. Robert, ask the traffic commandant to help the country and break down a list of Ugandans who have a right of way, please. This is Fred in Chira. Help the country know.
Yeah, I believe some people should be knowing, but it is the president, the vice president, the speaker of parliament, the chief justice. Then we have ambulance. Then we have vehicles in emergency situations that belong to police and the army. And then we have the fire vehicles, those trucks. Yes, they're just a few. So the rest of us, if you've not had yourself in that category, please lie low like an envelope.
Do not assume.
And keep in your lane. Yes.
Well, let's also look at, good morning, UBC. I have never been charged for traffic offense of any kind. To my shock, there is a charge in my name with license number. Where could this originate from, and what should I do to challenge this? Oumo Jonrad in Lila City.
That cannot happen. It is a wild allegation. There's no way you can have a ticket in your names with your license on a ticket. And where do we pick this information from to produce that ticket? But the Baganda say he should just forgotten that he was penalized some time back. Yes. So there's no way you can get Kirabo on a ticket with your permit number thereon, and then you say it wasn't you. It just can't happen. That is just out.
Well, good morning. This is Tony from Nance, and I appreciate the work, especially the operation going on these so-called VIPs had become a nuisance on the roads. My problem now are those people who remove number plates and put stickers of pictures, of some people. Please help us. This must be criminalized, hiding under support of the president.
That is also so true. There's so many people who've been actually they're not even they're stickers. They cover the actual number plate and then put stickers over the number plates. However, those cases we handle, we have an office, a liaison office at CPS from SFC who handles such matters. And once we get such people, we hand over to him. For them, they have a procedure on how to handle such people.
Okay.
Yes. I even have some of these number plates in my office if you want evidence. But through that channel, we get them.
Okay. Well, hello, thanks for the show. Katu subire kina kendeza ku accident ezize zi my Uganda.
Where is it?
Please send your message. How are you laughing, Afande? Let me leave that message. Well, good morning. Thanks for the show. This is Godward in Wachiso. Some police officers are on the road to swindle money. Even if you have a case or your vehicle has all it takes, they'll stop you and say bra bra bra, and there is nowhere to challenge them.
No.
We should be allowed to challenge traffic officers in courts of law and yes, and or in police courts.
No.
Some will tell you,
how can
will stop you and you will not fail to find anything on your car or to charge you.
When his car is perfect and the traffic officer is insisting on blah, blah, blah. That's what he said, right?
Yes.
So, we are here in these offices, not as cartoons or some funny objects in the offices. If you find such an office on the road, why don't you come to our offices and say, Mr. Kaumansaruk has been here, he has stopped me, and is demanding for ABCD from me.
Yes, the car has everything.
Yes, the car has everything. So please, some allegations are just not right. I mean, we are here. We are their supervisors. You mean? We are. No. You just come and complain if you have such cases with you.
Okay. Thanks for the good job, Salongo. This operation should have started yesterday. Kudos. Yours, Michael Wanambwa Mbale. Oh,
you're welcome.
Many people are appreciating here. Then he says, hello, comrades in the studio. This is David Mutatina, President, Mutafrika Development Fund. Please send us a message note. Then, who are entitled to the right of police themselves are lawbreakers. That's the IGP convoy, Minister for Internal Affairs, Commissioner of Prisons. Can I deny them illegal passage without being arrested by the same officers? You know what he's saying? For those classes you've not mentioned, if he has these sirens of right of way, can he obstruct and say, I'm not moving on the road because I know you have no right of way, according to you?
No, I did mention if someone has a lead car, a lead car has to have a siren, it has to have a roof light. You get it? Those are also different. Why? Because they are police vehicles. I did mention police vehicles in an emergency. Most of these, like our bosses, are in emergency situations, and that's why they have police lead cars. But it has been common scenario in Kampala where someone has no lead car, but they have their sirens and swiveling lights, and they're bulldozing everyone off the road. If we identify a lead car in a traffic jam, we shall pull that side to move until when that car passes, that convoy passes. It is different when you are driving without a police lead car.
Okay.
You get it? With a lead car, we can consider you to move faster.
Now, this one is very touching. Mauka Moses, a victim of a U-turn at Chegegwa town 4 years ago. If this was done some time ago, thanks and keep it up, I wouldn't be in the situation.
Wow, sorry about that.
Well done, Salongo Nsereko. We are happy that the operation has brought order on the roads. Hope you keep it up, not like how Operation Kawunyemu disappeared suddenly. Mutuyambe, keep it up.
Kawunyemu did not disappear. What made Kawunyemu to be halted is the challenge of COVID. You get it? That's why we halted, and we have not been cleared by the ministry that we resume, because the ministry has to come clear that now we are free of COVID. I'm telling you. I'm telling you.
So now,
and once the ministry
what do you use
cleared,
now to get those drunkards? You know,
once the ministry clears that we are free of COVID, the next day.
So now what are you doing?
Driving operations.
What methods are you using to nab?
Right now, we can use the eyes to determine whether someone is drunk, because you can tell that this person is not. But those particular people that we get and we suspect, we actually subject them to a test, because now it's not an operation that you are testing A, B, C, D on the same machine. So this is one of cases we handle, and we subject you to a test. If you're on the road like today and I catch you and I suspect you are drunk, I'll take you, subject you to an alcohol test, and then keep my, because I have to have evidence that actually Mr. Kirabo, I found him drunk.
Okay, now in the interest of time, as I earlier told you, we'll be going to Parliament for the Yala elections. In just less than a minute, let me have your final remarks. So that
I thank you, our dear Ugandans. Let's all try to be safe on the road. Let's respect other road users. And I thank you for this opportunity, Mr. Kirabo. You have given me to talk to the nation. Thank you very much.
Well, I also want to thank you so much for agreeing to come. And of course, our viewers, we have had so many messages this morning regarding this operation. We hope it is sustained. Earlier, I told you we'll be going to Parliament. Let's move to the August House and witness and follow the election of our representatives at the East Africa Legislative Assembly. Good morning. Keep it with us.
Chair, Honourable Minister.
I concur, Chair.
Honorable colleagues, I put the question that clause 32 as amended. No, that honorable colleagues, I put the question that clause 32 be amended as proposed. Those in favor say aye, and to the contrary no. The ayes have it.
Clause 32 as amended.
Honorable colleagues, I put